I'm not good enough. They're all better than me. I can't do it. Now I can assure you that every single person in this room has at least thought one of these things once in their life. But the question I have for all of you today is, have any of you ever taken the time to consider the consequences of you building up these personal boundaries for other people? Today, I would like to talk to you about how we must first break down our own personal boundaries before we can proceed to work on breaking down the boundaries for other people and the boundaries constricting society as a whole. Every day, we make choices that either help to chip away or reinforce boundaries. These choices can limit us, whether they're on a grand or on a personal scale. But I'm sure we can all agree that these choices do not only affect us. I believe that we are in one of the freest ages yet, with women able to vote, coming close to racial equality, gay and transgender acceptance. However, in order for society to move forward further, we must first have self-acceptance in a society where self-doubt is ever promoted. In my experience, people are often intolerant of things they don't understand, and hatred and misconstrued ideas are often a result of negative perceptions and ideas about oneself. So once we accept ourselves and break down our own personal boundaries, only then can we move forward and break down the boundaries surrounding society and help other people. I chose this image because I thought it represented my point quite clearly. It's a picture of the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Every single person that came out on that fateful day had to break down their own personal boundaries, had to have the courage to believe that what they were fighting for was right, and what they were doing would help other people, if not only themselves. And this wall did not fall because one person came and broke it down, but because a series of people broke their personal boundaries and were able to work together to break down a very large and prominent physical boundary that in turn helped many, many people. Long before I even started to write my speech, let alone come out to talk to you today, I had already begun building up barriers subconsciously for myself. I thought perhaps what I was saying just wasn't important. Perhaps I wasn't good enough of a speaker to say it. Perhaps someone else would say it better for me. But in truth, I really had to take a moment and think. I had to understand that what I was saying was coming from me. It was important and it mattered. And in truth, if I didn't say it, maybe no one would ever say it at all. And what would it be like? What would the consequences be if I did not break down my own personal boundaries in order to help other people break down their own? I'm sure all of you know who this famous man is, Martin Luther King Jr. He made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And I'd like all of you to imagine what would have happened if he had not been able to break down his own personal boundaries, his fear to make that speech. On that day alone, 200,000 people watched him speak live, and millions more have seen him across the decades, and even to this day still watch and read about his famous speech. 250,000 people took part in that march, and he motivated every single one of them. So, what if? What if he had not broken down his personal boundaries and had not made that speech? Well, then perhaps the boundaries surrounding civil rights would not have been broken. And today's society that we live in could be very, very different. Now, before you read the words behind me, I'd like you to take a moment again and be honest with yourself. We all judge other people based upon the way we judge ourselves. We ask ourselves, are they more attractive? Do more people like them? Are they wealthier, more successful? And I'm sure all of us can understand and see that if we look at these questions that we're asking ourselves, they're all based upon negative perceptions we have about ourselves. These questions, often unanswerable and ending up with negative consequences, build up boundaries not only for ourselves but other people. Because if we believe that we are not able to do something, we become resentful and intolerant of other people that are able to do something and break past that boundary. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that if we have positive perceptions of ourselves, if we do not doubt ourselves, then we will be able to push back past our boundaries and in turn help other people push past their boundaries and altogether break larger boundaries, constricting many people. Behind me is some propaganda from 1920s America. In America during the 1920s, there was a lot of intolerance and hatred towards communists, communism, and black people. This was based partially of an inherent fear that jobs would be stolen, livelihoods taken away, that perhaps the government could turn communist. But I ask all of you, if these people had been confident in their ability to do their job, if they'd been confident that their livelihoods were well and sound and had good grounding, if they were confident that their government was being run as it should, would they really have had that fear? And would they really have been so fearful that they would have had to channel that aggression towards other people? I personally think not. Now, as I've said before, we're in the freest age yet. However, today's society has an ever-growing problem of the promotion of self-doubt. Every day, we see through different forms of media the promotion of self-doubt and the lack of self-acceptance, so much so that it has honestly become the norm. And this is part of negative perceptions of yourself. And it's only natural for when you resent yourself and put up boundaries for yourself that you will act differently towards others and consequently put up boundaries for them as well. We see this build-up of boundaries and lack of self-acceptance even in songs from bands as influential as One Direction, with song lyrics such as, "You don't know you're beautiful, and that's what makes you beautiful." I believe this quote by Era Stone leads well into my next point. No one should be encouraged to hate their bodies because they do not match up to an unrealistic, photoshopped fictions that decorate our ads and tabloids. Like what A.R. Stone said, tabloids and media are filled with this idealistic, fictional character that is perfect and the way people are deemed supposed to be. They tell you how to act, how to look, and how to be. And it suggests that if you are not the way the tabloids describe this perfect person, then you are simply not good enough, and you deserve to have these boundaries put up for you. But honestly, that is simply not the case. These boundaries should not be there. And even if you do not match up to this idealistic perfection, that does not mean you're any less worthy to go out there and do what you want, to be what you want. Society needs to adopt this idea of self-love, because self-love is not vanity. And with self-acceptance, then we can move forward and accept other people and break down the boundaries. Before I read the comment that Tess Halliday said, I'd like to introduce you to her. She's a size 22 model who is very popular, especially now. She gained popularity first on Instagram, and then was able to join an agency. She broke down her own personal boundaries and said that yes, she could work as a model, even if she did not fit into the fictional idealistic standard, because she was able to do it. She had that talent. However, because she's confident and happy with the way she is, many insecure people and intolerant people have targeted her and harassed her, not only over the internet, but on the streets, and have tried to put boundaries up against her and stop her working as a model. This is very unfair and should not be put up against someone who clearly has the talent to work in an industry such as that. She says, "What do we do as humans when we don't understand something? We tear it apart instead of educating ourselves and opening our minds and hearts. So for me, instead of taking the road of hate towards them, I just hope that one day they learn to love themselves." Moving on from this idea of boundaries when it's to do with aesthetics and self-perception. Self-doubt is not just about that. I am personally my own worst critic, in the sense that I set myself very high goals in all aspects of life. And when I'm unable to reach these goals, I'm very hard on myself and find myself, even sometimes subconsciously, putting up boundaries for myself. For example, if I get a grade in a test that's worse than I thought it would be, then I think that I'm useless at the subject, that I may not even bother taking the test because why should I do it if I'm so useless at it? And I put up boundaries for myself. And because I have this negative perception of myself, that influences and affects the way I act towards other people. I end up being resentful of those who got a better grade and had a better day, and put up boundaries for them as well. So for something like this, we must accept that perhaps you did not do as well as you thought, in whichever aspect of life you are thinking of. But that does not make you any less great or any less worthy. Perhaps it was just a bad day, and you do not need to put up boundaries for yourself, let alone other people. This man behind me is called Andy Birsak, and he's the lead singer of one of my favorite bands. And he is a very big advocate about self-acceptance and self-love and breaking the boundaries. And I believe his quote sums up quite well my talk. "There's absolutely no one in the world that can tell you you can't do something. You're the only person that can set that limitation." Before I leave you with these quotes, I'd like to leave you with a parting message. No matter who you are, no matter how different you seem from this idealistic, fictional person you are presented with in today's society, accept that you are great. Accept that you can do whatever you want to do. Accept that you as a person are worthy and you can do whatever. Because once we break down our own personal boundaries, then we can move forward and break down the boundaries for other people and the boundaries constricting society. Remembering what I told you about the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, that wall did not fall because of one person coming along and completely obliterating it. No. It fell because many people had courage in themselves and slowly, all together, in a series of chips, brought the wall to its knees. Thank you.